Check it out. It's the Laugh to Learn podcast. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Laugh to Learn podcast, your weekly source for a fun spin on all the news you need to know about. My name is, as always, Jacob Paveo, and I come to you from the Great White North each and every Wednesday afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If it's your first time here, as always, welcome. I guess you don't even know it's always, but welcome to the show. And if you're returning, as always, thank you for coming back and checking it out. You can follow me on social media. All the links are in the description for this episode. You know what to do. You're not new to podcasts. Hit the subscribe button if you like it. Drop a review if you've got something you want to say. You can reach out to me using the contact page at www.laughtolearnpodcast.com. While you're over on the website, you can check out the merch store. There's a whole bunch of fun stuff for everyone. And this week, it might be a little bit controversial, I guess you could say. I don't think what I'm going to say is controversial, but I usually don't. And then the odd time that I do say something controversial and things sort of pop off, then things get crazy. But I'm going to say up front that I don't think what I'm going to cover is controversial. The thing we're going to discuss, it's going to be in the title for this podcast, so you already know, but we're going to be discussing Orange Shirt Day, or as it's now referred to, the Truth and Reconciliation Day here in Canada. We've covered on this podcast, if you haven't seen the episode, go back. It's the episode with my cousin, Maria Rogers, all about not only systemic racism. It was after, I think, George Floyd or one of those events last summer. And we talked about, racism in the U.S., which is predominantly targeted towards black minorities and Hispanic minorities. But here in Canada, the major issue we have is with indigenous minorities. And we discussed that on the podcast and stuff that she's done and she has worked on in the past and continues to work on today. And one thing that happened after that episode, it was actually, I believe it was earlier this year. Actually, for sure it was earlier this year. The federal government under Trudeau passed legislation to make a national holiday, which is it's September 30th, so it's going to be, I'm trying to think of like what day the podcast is posting. So it's going to be the day after the podcast posts. On September 30th, which is going to be Thursday of this week, because the legislation was passed July 20th. They're going to create this Truth and Reconciliation Day, and it's going to be a national holiday, so banks are going to be closed and stuff like that. But I don't really want to talk about the day itself, because I think it's fantastic that it's being recognized. A lot of people say it's not enough, that more needs to be done, and of course more needs to be done. There's still, I think during the election, the conversation was like 108 or 109 reserves in the country without clean drinking water, which is absurd. Lots has to be done, but in my opinion, like, this is a good start. The problem that I want to discuss here is that this is a federal holiday which is not being adopted by the provinces. Now, this is a very specific political issue, but I think it has much wider ramifications. So I got an email earlier this week that, my workplace is doing like Orange Shirt Day, and they're actually very connected with the community and stuff, and they're doing a good job of educating people and whatnot. But what bothers me is that most provinces, have not adopted this as a holiday. So far, BC, Manitoba, Newfoundland, PEI, the Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and now Nova Scotia, so 7 of 13 provinces and territories, so basically half, are recognizing this as a holiday. Now, the specific political issue that I'm discussing here is the difference between a federal and a provincial holiday. So here in the province of Ontario, for example, actually, let's start nationally. There are only 4 holidays, rather, that are recognized as a physical day off, a legitimate holiday. Actually, it's 5 in every single province. So you have Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving, the traditional Christian holidays. Canada Day, July 1st, and Labor Day, which is the first Monday in September. Those are the 5 holidays that are recognized everywhere. Here in Ontario, we have a 6th. We recognize Family Day. And then if you go around the provinces, I'm not going to get into them because they're all different. Some have like 9 or 10 holidays. Others have 5 or 6. Most of the larger provinces have 5 or 6. Most of the smaller provinces have several others. Like, they celebrate the day that the specific province joined Canada and stuff like that, right? There's all these other holidays that go on. The problem that I have with Truth and Reconciliation Day, it's actually Truth and Reconciliation Week, and then that's the specific day that they've given to it. And the problem that I have is this. The provinces haven't adopted it, which means it's just another day. And I think it's actually kind of disgraceful that provinces like Ontario and Quebec that were predominant in the exploitation of indigenous peoples. They housed a vast number of residential schools. BC also, I mean, no province was great when it comes to this, but BC also was a key player. But BC has recognized this as a provincial holiday, as I believe they should. And I think Ontario and Quebec are essentially giving the short end of the stick to this by just being like, literally, like, I've seen all this stuff on social media, like, oh, Orange Shirt Day and all this shit. Like, yeah, we're going to wear orange, and the premiers are, wearing their orange t-shirts and pretending they care. It's like, well, make it a fucking holiday. And I understand the implications of adding a mandatory paid, because they're paid days off in the province, but and a conservative government's not going to do that. And that's basically what it's being, is any conservative led, and not necessarily the Conservative Party, because it's important to know that Quebec is not it's not the Progressive Conservative Party of Quebec that's leading it. It's a different conservative party that it's specific to Quebec. But the conservative-led provinces are the ones that are not recognizing this as a provincial holiday. And to me, maybe this is my bias. Maybe this is where my snowflake liberalness comes out. I don't know. But I can't fathom why we're in a position where Ontario, which is the largest economy in this country, as a province wasn't able to come together after everything we've learned about residential schools in the last year. And I've said on this podcast before that I don't know if it's just the area that I went to school or the school board specifically or what, but like I was educated on residential schools in elementary school, in rather I don't want to say graphic detail, but they didn't hold back. It wasn't like they spun it as some historical blemish that like was actually kind of a good thing. Like, it was pretty honest. I've been aware of residential schools since I was like 6 or 7, and had conversations with members of whatever we're calling them at the time. When I was a kid, they were Aboriginal, and then First Nations, and then Indigenous, however you choose to identify yourself. I've had conversations with individuals who attended residential schools, like back in high school. I was at a community center in town here. It's I think it's like the Native Cultural Center, I think is what it's called. And I had conversations with individuals who attended residential schools because I was curious about them back then. Like it's something in this area. It's not news to me or to us, I should say. But clearly, most of the province, most of the country, was unaware of the atrocities that had occurred. And the fact that it's now, there's no one that can hide from it. There's no one that can say, I didn't know. You know what I mean? If you have a cell phone or a television, news access of any sort, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or the 6 o'clock news, you are aware of the crazy amount of stuff we've learned about residential schools that have been national news for a year and a half, 2 years now. So there's no excuse for any provincial government to leave this as simply a federal holiday. Now, to explain what that means, essentially, federal employees don't work on a federal holiday. So that means you have no federal judges, so criminal courts aren't happening. But of course, provincial judges will still, I think they actually always work because like bail court always runs, like stuff like that. That's just a random side note. Banks are federally controlled, so all bank institutions will be closed. And that's basically it. Like random federal offices, your MP won't be working. That's basically it. Everything else, like you will not notice a difference in your life because we have online banking now, so who the hell ever needs to go into a bank? I don't know. But otherwise, everything else is just life as usual, and they're asking people, wear your orange shirt and support this day. I challenge them to go further. Put your money where your mouth is. If you're going around as a premier saying we should be wearing our orange shirts and recognizing the indigenous populations and accounting for the negative things that happened to them, I think the very least you could do is by giving the entire population this day off to focus on it. It's the same reason that I think Remembrance Day should be a provincial holiday. I have no idea how it's not. It's actually mind-blowing to me that it's not. You have, on Remembrance Day, we have like cenotaph parades and stuff like that no one can attend because we're all at work and school. And even when I was younger, like the schools don't even do like field trips. They don't take buses or even walk downtown. Like, my high school, it was a 10-minute walk to get to the parade line where our cenotaph parade happened, and they never let us go and do that. You had to skip school to do that. And it's just insane that this is a reality now with Orange Shirt Day, where everyone together is saying that it's time to come together and make a difference, and everyone agrees on that. Why are we in a position where it's not worth a day off for people to be focused on this ongoing problem? Like Remembrance Day, fine. It's an old problem. It's not, but because Remembrance Day has become about more than just the Second World and First World War. But This is like an actual thing. There are over 100 reserves in this country without clean water. Like, this is a current problem that we should at least spend one day a year focusing on. And there are a lot of people who are upset at this because now, by the provincial government not getting involved here at least, people don't, I'd think, realize the importance of it. And I know a lot of people who have said things like, oh, you just want a day off, blah, blah, blah. Look, I can take as much time off as I want. So I'm not the kind of person who is out here saying, like, I just need one more day off a year. So I think I'm actually in a valid position to speak to this. And I'm just being honest when I say that I think people drastically, and I mean drastically, undervalue the awareness that comes from the purpose of a holiday. And here is my case in point. Of the holidays we have in Ontario, right? Family Day is the only one that was it was given because there was no holiday between Christmas and Easter, and suicide rates were at their ultimate highest, and we didn't want to call it Suicide Prevention Day, so we called it Family Day, where you go and hang out with your family, right? But when we talk about Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, Canada Day, and Labor Day, those 5 holidays, there is no one who has lived here for more than 5 years over the age of 21 who doesn't know exactly what those holidays are. You might not be a Christian. You might not know all the intricacies of Easter, but you know it's got something to do with religion. Everyone knows who Santa Claus is. Every single person, the Easter Bunny, right? They all know who that is. At Thanksgiving, everyone knows we eat turkey. They know it's something to do with the Pilgrims. You know what I mean? There's a basic understanding of what all of these days mean, and everyone knows what Canada Day is. Everyone, it's just like July 4th in the U.S. Everyone knows what the 4th of July is. Everyone does in the country, because these are nationally, or not necessarily nationally for sure, but the holidays I've just gone through are nationally agreed upon days where everyone stops, has a good time because they're able to do whatever they want for the day, and in the background they are aware of why it is so. And I question the Ontario legislature, as well as Quebec and the other provinces who have yet to do so. We're talking about Alberta, Saskatchewan, Nunavut hasn't done it, and others. I'm like looking at the list and trying to subtract provinces, and this is just not going to work while talking. But there are a number of provinces that haven't done so, and I challenge those legislatures, those provincial governments, to answer the question: why is it not worth having a focused day where everyone is made blatantly aware that change needs to happen to make the lives of our Indigenous populations better? I can't fathom why we're in a position, provincially or federally, where that's not the case. I can't understand why people are shooting down the idea of a physical holiday. I was on Reddit reading about it, and maybe that was my bad. Shouldn't have gone to Reddit for some kosher opinion. But it's a valid opinion nonetheless. But people are adamant that the majority of individuals who are supporting this simply want another day off. They're even saying it for people who vote in favor of it in provincial legislatures, that it's just another provincial employee who wants a day off. Oh, you already make $100,000 a year, now you want another day off? No, what the fuck are you talking about? You sound insane. Like, you actually sound crazy when you say that. You clearly have no concept of what a holiday does for the conscience of the reason behind it. You know what I mean? when you tell people you do not have to work today, you're still going to get paid, and here's the reason why. That reason why becomes focused upon. And maybe, I'm not saying for sure, because I don't know, but maybe it will help push the needle towards progress for the underserved indigenous population. And I don't know how or why that would be a bad thing. I really, really don't. Before we wrap today, I want to discuss some issues that I came across online that aren't specific to me or my podcast, but I think should be addressed, because I don't want people to feel like I'm driving individuals out or in to the podcast one way or another by their political persuasion. So in the past week, it has become very popular online to post about supporters of the People's Party of Canada, that if you voted for the PPC, you're a racist, you're a woman hater, you're a misogynist, I guess is the word I was just looking for that I couldn't find, and all this other stuff. Now, everyone knows that I didn't even discuss the PPC in any of my platform discussions and stuff like that, because they are an irrelevant party. And I was going to do a full episode on this, but I think I can summarize this in like less than 10 minutes. The PPC, they appear to be nationally more popular than the Green Party. I'm going to tell you this, they're simply not. The PPC just ran way more candidates. So when you see that they pulled almost 10% of the vote, like I had a conversation with my brother and he's like freaking out. How did they get so popular? They're not popular. They just ran candidates everywhere. Because like if you wanted to run for the PPC, they said go for it. They didn't even question it. They didn't look into who you were. They don't have the resources to do that. So they had candidates running everywhere, whereas the Green Party had very select candidates that they put a lot of effort into. And that's why the Green Party still won 2 seats, and of course the PPC did not win any seats. They're not a popular party in Canada. But I don't think that it's fair to assume that individuals who voted for that party were anything other than, you may have an argument that they are sort of questioning towards the authority around mask policies, vaccination policies, and maybe they are more persuaded by individuals not of the scientific community as at large, but of a more niche scientific community that they find on the internet. Now, I don't judge someone for any decision they have come to in regards to their health. I've talked quite openly about it over the last few weeks. I'm kind of getting sick of the hatred towards people who are choosing not to be vaccinated. And, declaring someone who's not vaccinated as an anti-vaxxer doesn't actually make sense, because that doesn't mean that an anti-vaxxer actively promotes not getting vaccinated. It doesn't have anything to do with your vaccine status. So there's just a lot of stuff that I'm like, I don't know. Like, people are really popping off on individuals who voted for the PPC. And look, I don't understand why you would have voted Conservative. I don't understand why you would have voted for the Green Party. I don't understand why you would have voted for any of the actively running independent candidates. And I don't understand why you would have voted for the PPC. The only 2 parties I discussed towards the end that I can understand voting for were the NDP and the Liberal Party. And what it comes down to is, like, that's politics. I don't get it. I don't know why you support Maxime Bernier. I don't know what's appealing about him. If I saw him in the street, would I be like, hey, it's Maxime Bernier, let's take a picture together? Yeah, probably. But that's just like any other candidate, except maybe not Anna Marie Paul. But she's gone anyways. So it's one of those things that's like, he's an he's an interesting individual, but like I would never vote for him. I don't understand the support for him, but I don't need to. It's cool that other people do. And if any listeners are supporters of the PPC rather, that's fine by me. It's cool that we can have this, although it's a one-way interaction, it's still a weekly interaction, and people can get involved, and it's just like a cool way to go about our lives by being just content and happy to not overwhelm ourselves with frustration, anger, and then, so far as absolute outright hatred towards individuals because of their political persuasion. And, I've discussed it before. The whole reason for this podcast from the beginning was to create a fun but also interesting space for political dialogue. And even if I absolutely disagree about something, I never shut it down completely. Like, you guys have heard me talk about communism before and what I think about it, right? How I literally don't talk to friends if I know they have a Huawei phone. Like, that's how far I go, right? I'll talk to them, but I only communicate to them through like Facebook and stuff. I do not communicate by text. I don't call, like nothing like that, because that's how I feel about it. But I don't shut those people out of my life. I would never say that because someone's a communist, they can't appear on the podcast. Like, if anything, I'm more interested to talk to them on the podcast. I'm more interested to talk to someone who voted for the PPC than basically any other party right now. That's the most fascinating person to discuss their political persuasions. So shutting down conversation with individuals who have opposing political persuasions to your own only does one thing. It makes you more naive of the opinions that are out there. And it makes you more confident in your own in your own active correctness. I guess is how I'll word it. It doubles down by creating this bubble of people who only agree with you. It doubles down on the fact in your own world that everything you believe is correct. And if you're never, ever challenged, and I understand that some people just don't have the personality to be actively challenged in like political conversation, and I'm not saying that that's any form of requirement, but if you are never challenged, or challenging rather, any of your opinion, how are you supposed to grow as a person? Because unless you think you're perfect. You know what I mean? So the only bad thing that can come of having a conversation with a person who voted for the People's Party of Canada or any other party that you don't support, the only thing that can come of it, truly, if you are absolutely like how I am, right? Steadfast in what I believe. It's very difficult to change my opinion. It can be done, but it is very difficult. I have no fear walking into a conversation. Most of my friends are very conservative. I am not. I have no problem having conversations with those individuals because you're not about to change my opinion, and I'm not about to change yours, but that means that we can have an active and interesting conversation. What kind of conversation is it when everyone just always agrees with each other? How does that make any sense? Like, if I was to come on the podcast with another person, and this is kind of why I ended up not going with a co-host, because I honestly, there were a few people I wanted to ask, but they don't live close enough, and it wouldn't work every week, and so it just never happened. The individuals who I would have had access to sit down with every week think very similar to me, and that's boring. Like the people who can actually talk on a mic and live close enough to me, it would just be like, I would have brought up Orange T-shirt Day, and they would have said, yeah, it should be a holiday. And we'd say, yeah, okay, great. And that would have been 30 seconds, and then we would have needed a new topic. It just doesn't work. You can't always agree with people all the time. That's boring. Life is so boring in that sense. So to be out here saying, if you voted for the PPC, you're a racist, you're a misogynist, you're a homophobe, I want nothing to do with you, you're an anti-vaxxer, you're anti-science, fuck you, delete me from Facebook, delete me from Twitter, wherever the hell, I don't want anything to do with you. And I saw more than 10 people post that across my different social media platforms in the last week since recording my last episode. To me, it's a sign of your own fragility. It's a sign that you're afraid to be exposed to someone else's opinion. It's not even a fact. It's an opinion. You know what I mean? Like, this is just someone else who thinks a different opinion than you do. And I don't understand that fear. For me, I think, like I said earlier, it's more interesting to have a conversation with those people. They're not going to change my mind. They're not going to get me to vote for Maxime Bernier next time. You know what I mean? Like, that's never going to happen. So what is there to fear other than maybe getting an interesting conversation about it and maybe being able to change that person's opinion by expressing my opinion, you know? And because of how steadfast and knowledgeable I am on my own subjects that I'm discussing, you know what I mean? What's honestly the worst thing that can happen? I went for lunch this weekend with a friend who's not vaccinated and not getting vaccinated. And whenever we discuss it, it's not like he can convince me to become unvaccinated. And this is something I've mentioned before. Like, I can't go to, like, the blood clinic and be like, here's my arm, take it out. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to change my mind. So what's the worst thing that happens? I change his mind? You know, I have no fear of unvaccinated people because I'm vaccinated, so I'm not going to get sick and die. I don't understand the fear in society right now about people from the other side of this topic, because it feels like a lot of individuals who are pro-vaccine are trying to draw a line between society and separate out the other people. And for me, what that does is it just creates division. It creates hatred, which is something that I have no time for. I don't have time to hate on anyone. I honestly don't. I talk mad shit about Maxime Bernier. I don't hate the guy. I have nothing to do with him. He literally only crosses my mind when I'm doing this podcast, right? I don't have time in my life to think about other people and be upset about their own life choices. You know what I mean? Like, I think prostitution and drugs should be completely illegal. Would I be out there selling my body and fucking taking the money and shooting heroin? No. But I don't have time to sit here and be upset that other people want to do that with their lives. It's on them. It's cool with me. Like, go do you. Vote for who you want to vote for. If you don't want to get a vaccine and instead you want to shoot heroin, like, okay, you know what I mean? Not my life. But it's your life. Like, go ahead and do it. Just don't do it in my living room. And it's this weird position that people are putting individuals like me in, where I've kind of been told by people that it's like, well, because you hang out with someone or multiple people actually who aren't vaccinated, then you're putting us at risk. And I'm like, look, if we're about to draw that line in the sand, like, hurry up and draw the line, because I know where I stand on this, and it's a solid, I don't give a fuck. Like, if your choice is to write me off, like, that's your choice. But I'm not the kind of person who's just going to write off a bunch of people because they are maybe not as educated, maybe not as confident as I am in, you know, in the information we're getting about vaccines. Maybe they don't understand what they're seeing. Maybe they have someone in their ear who controls their life in some way. You know what I mean? Whether it's financially or just they get some sort of reward system from a person who's like, you better not be getting vaccinated. Like, I don't know what's going on in people's lives. I don't have time to focus on that. I just know that I'm safe. I've protected myself. There's nothing further I can do other than have the conversation and maybe change your mind. And I think that's where I want people to get to. I want people to be confident in themselves. If you're confident in your political persuasions, if you're confident in your your vaccine status or whatever the case may be, you don't have to write off other people, especially from social media where you have no risk of contracting anything, right? Except maybe an idea or a new political persuasion you could contract from the internet. But if that's your fear, then you're probably the person who should talk to others the most, because that means maybe you have the most to gain if you're not confident in your current political persuasions. So I just want to reach out and say anyone's welcome here. Everyone that listens, like, try your best to just be kind to people. You know what I mean? Like, who cares if someone else thinks differently than you? It actually doesn't affect your life in any measurable way. And as someone who's been talking into a microphone, for 9 years now, next year will be 10 years of talking to the people, in very different quantities of audience size and everything. I have never come across a situation where I've been interviewing someone or discussing something where it put my life at risk in any way to have a conversation with someone. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying, like, because of COVID, sitting down across from someone, if your life's obviously potentially at risk, I guess. Okay, you can have that argument. But when it comes to social media, like, there's no reason to ever turn away from the potential to have an engaging conversation with someone. How do you know that you're not going to make them realize the truth? You know what I mean? Or your truth, I guess I should say. How do you know that you're not going to help them in some way? By shutting the conversation down, by drawing that line through society and separating people out into, one side and the other. You have the racists who voted for the PPC, and then you have everyone else. It's like, I don't know, man. I really don't think 10% of Canada is racist. I really, really don't. I would be baffled, and I mean baffled, if the number was that high. And a lot of people will disagree with me, and I think that, honestly, most people don't really realize what racism is. Like, you can see racism. Racism does not hide, right? And, I'm getting into a whole conversation, the difference between a racist and systemic racism. So maybe that's a conversation for a different time. I'm going to cut it off there. I just think that we should be reaching out to other people, be kind to one another, and keep conversation alive. Because if we aren't talking to everyone, then we might as well be talking to no one. Once you cut a group off and you say that they are an other, as in an other group from us, they are an untouchable, basically, you are creating unnecessary conflict. And that's what we're seeing in the United States. There's no question in my mind that that's what we're seeing, and I don't want that to spill over here. And thus far, it hasn't. And I just think that when I start seeing that kind of hatred come from people, I think you just need to take a deep breath. You can't let your anger and your emotions, you can't apply your own onto someone else or onto another group. And that's what I'm starting to see, and it's concerning. But anyways, thank you for sticking it out with the podcast, listening all the way to the very end. As always, I want to thank you from the very, very, very bottom of my heart. I actually forget how I signed the show off. But thank you for checking it out. Take this conversation with your friends and family out in the real world. Take it online. Keep the conversation going and expand the conversational horizons. My name has been, is still, and will be till the end of my days, Jacob Paveo signing off. Thank you guys so much for your support lately. Since the election, it's been fantastic. Don't forget to share the podcast if you're enjoying it. That's the best way I've found for new listeners is like when one of your friends just says like, yo, check this podcast out, whether you're posting it on Facebook or just saying it face to face with someone, you know what I mean? That I think is the best, where you're like, yo, check out the Laugh to Learn podcast. So thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. Yeah, you know what to do. You need to keep on social distancing. You need to keep washing your hands. If you need that booster shot, some of my American listeners, I know you guys can now get it. Go get those booster shots. If you've yet to do so, I still encourage everyone, go get vaccinated. It's never too late. You can do it in like 2 weeks now. You could get them like 2 weeks apart. Today was actually supposed to be my second vaccine dose. How weird is that? And instead of getting my second vaccine dose, because I ended up getting it back in August, I was actually able to buy concert tickets finally today for the first time in 2 years. I bought tickets to Billy Talent and Rise Against, which is sick. The concert's in April, so I'm hyped about that. I'm actually going with Maria, my cousin who I discussed earlier in the podcast. So gonna be a good time. Keep social distancing. Keep washing your hands. Keep wearing those masks. Keep on laughing. And keep on learning.